with 23 delegates that night. I didn't go to my own precinct. Then I was in San Juan County with 15 of the 17 delegates there that were elected the night before, the next morning, and then 8 of 8 delegates in Grand County. And then from Grand County I went to Emery County, and then by the evening I was in Utah County for an event. So I hit 5 counties in the first 24 hours, and it hasn't stopped since. We've been covering as much ground as we can, and we've had as few as 4 people at an event and as many as 62 people at an event. So we're just trying to do as many events as we can and give a chance for everyone to ask questions and get to know me as a candidate. So I thank Deidre for hosting our event.
My pleasure.
So why are you doing this?
Well, I'm a delegate, just
good.
like everybody else here in the room,
Good.
and so...
Better yet, why are you doing this?
Well, I'm hopeful to answer that through the next hour or so. I don't want to take more than about an hour total. So by hopefully 8:30, you'll have as many questions answered as possible. I'll give you a little bit of background, maybe in the first 5 minutes, of who I am, where I'm from, and what prompts me to run. And then just fire away with questions. So my wife actually teaches at BYU. She's a molecular biologist at BYU, and my daughter is a freshman on the University of Utah basketball team. So I'm the only candidate that can bring the Utes and the Cougars together in this process. And if you haven't heard me speak, by the way, this is a raspy voice, but it's one I'm cursed or blessed with. It's not just because I've been talking too much. I just happen to have a voice that...
Are you McGrath?
Yeah, McGrath the crime dog, or I like to say Jack Kemp, conservative tax cutting voice. Hopefully it's a voice that's heard in Washington, D.C. Hi, welcome. So let me give you a little background. I grew up in Salt Lake. My mom was a single mom. My dad left shortly after he met me. We lived around Salt Lake for a while. She married my stepfather when I was 11. We moved into a trailer park in West Jordan at that time, 12-foot wide by 60-foot trailer. And I grew up in pretty simple circumstances. I went to Bingham High School with a lot of the miners and farmers of at that time in that part of the valley, in Salt Lake Valley. I went down to Snow College and played football. Was the first kid to graduate from college in my family. And after graduating from college and working for 1 year in commercial banking with Wells Fargo, I went back and worked in the Reagan administration. And my job in the Reagan administration, this was 87, 88, the tail end of his second term, was to I was in an agency called Exim Bank, and I went to Latin America to collect unpaid debt during the debt crisis. If you recall, there was a Latin American debt crisis in the late 80s that all of those currencies tanked, and governments spent money like they were going out of style, and their currencies went off a cliff, and their debt all of a sudden was 3, 4, and 10 times as much as it had been before in Mexico, Venezuela, Colombia, Panama, and other places. So that was my job as a young college graduate, essentially. And after leaving the Reagan administration, I have been in private consulting for the last over 22 years. And my job in the private sector has been to help businesses, to be a consultant, a financial management consultant, business development consultant on domestic projects and some international projects in Latin America and Southeast Asia. So I've worked in quite a few markets, quite a few industries, including agribusiness, construction materials, high-tech industries, energy industries, and healthcare industries. And so I've been involved in consulting and helping companies and building a few companies in those arenas over that 22-year period. Today I have, of note, I represent a company that is a publicly traded company here in Provo called Razor Technologies, and we're building geothermal plants in the western U.S. in New Mexico, Nevada, and Utah, southern Utah and Beaver County. And in that particular rural area, the company's invested $100 million, over $100 million, to build a geothermal plant, which is basically finding old volcanoes. You poke holes in the ground, up comes hot water, and you turn it into electricity. And I also am a part-time CFO for a healthcare facility in southern Utah called Silverado Academy, where we have 55 students on campus, mostly boys who are troubled teens from 13 to 18. And I'm the CFO, so I run all the finances for the company, and I have 2 partners in that business who help run the program day to day. So at my core, I'm a businessman, I'm an entrepreneur, and having worked with a lot of different industries and companies, and continue to do that today. since on the government side, since leaving the radio administration, I've been involved in national campaigns for president. I get involved in campaigns because I think that's part of my responsibility. I worked with George W. Bush for president and McCain Palin for the Western states, coordinating activities in Nevada, Colorado, and New Mexico. And I have been involved in running myself. Several years ago, I was Utah County Party Chair. At the time, my wife and I had just moved back to Utah, and they asked me to serve in that capacity, so I did that, and then halfway through my term, they redistricted the 2nd District, and Jim Matheson looked vulnerable, so I threw my hat in the ring, and unfortunately, so did 11 other people. So we had 12 candidates in the race, and I ended up winning the convention. I wasn't very well known. There was a state legislator, a county councilman from Salt Lake County, former Congressman Merrill Cook, and other people that had a stronger base, but I just ran straight at the delegates on a grassroots basis, and I won 57% at the final tally at convention. You need 60%, as you know, and I went into the primary and lost to a guy named John Swallow by less than 1%, and he went on to go against Matheson in the general and lost to Jim Matheson. Since that time, I was also asked by in fact, by Jason Chaffetz and Governor Herbert and Governor Huntsman to help on education policy. I didn't want to work in the administration, but I volunteered a year of my time to take on education policy for the state of Utah. I was the deputy of education for a year at a time when we took on more rigor in the high school, trying to have more math, reading, and science in the senior year for high school students. We expanded charter schools. We passed a voucher bill that was ultimately overturned by the state, and we worked on full-day kindergarten versus half-day kindergarten in terms of a cost-benefit analysis. We wanted there to be optional full-day kindergarten, which is more effective at teaching fundamental skills, and not mandate kindergarten per se. So the final part of that was that I took on No Child Left Behind as a representative of the state to go back to Washington and take on a Republican White House, Republican legislature on very important education policy that was crippling our ability to compete in this state. We tried to wrestle out of the mandates, which were in large part unfunded, and it was the tail wagging the dog in terms of education policy, because in Utah we get a little over $200 million from the federal government. It's our money, but they give it back to us on education policy on a $3.5 billion budget that comes from the state. So they try to influence our entire system while only having a small financial component that they contribute. And I'm a big believer that the federal government should be out of education. They shouldn't be intervening and trying to mandate every aspect of our education. They will tell us that they're giving us more freedom when actually they're taking it away. And the Department of Education, like many departments, restricts our ability to I think, function more efficiently and effectively at the state level. So with that kind of introduction, let me just kind of open up for questions. We'll spend the rest of the time just with question and answers, and we'll try and wrap up around 8:30 more or less, and you can